All right, here we are. One more time. Oh, Dr. Henry, we can't hear you. Hold on. We should be able to hear you now. Try that.
All right. Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, sir. I got you.
All right. Listen, I'm trying to unbutton my top button like you, man.
Oh, man. Hey, we got an empty spot right now. Let me see if I can fix that right quick. Y'all close your eyes right quick while I drop Dr. Wade in here, Pastor Wade. Here we go. Just going to pretend like he's sitting right there. Boom.
There you go.
Something like that. He's going to be with us momentarily. He is on the road on pastor duty. Pastor Wade was a little out of town doing a introduction for a new pastor in a district this weekend in South Central Conference, or was there for that. And he was about 2 hours away, so he is rushing to try to get back so that he can be with us. But we are so happy that you all are with us right now. Today, it is August 7, 2021. Pastor Henry, Dr. Henry, man,
listen,
August.
This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Look,
yes, sir.
Pastor Wade is on pastoral assignment. You're on pastoral assignment. I'm on pastoral assignment. Listen, I'm doing it from a new spot today. I'm here at the Spring Meadows Church here in Florida, Longwood, Florida, the greater Orlando area. And the reason why I'm doing it here is because in about an hour or so, we will have a commissioning service for one of my elders right here, which happens to be the conference president, a conference treasurer of the
you're prophesying. Don't be prophesying on the pastor's roundtable.
No, we're keeping the team intact. But yeah, so we're praising God for her. She's doing it here. It gives us a little bit more room for social distancing and all that good stuff. So I definitely want to support her on this journey. So that's why I'm here.
Hey, well, awesome. Hey, let's take a minute, Dr. Henry, and let's see who is in the chat already today. I'm going to scroll up. Let's see. We've got Jaquanda Mackey from West Palm Beach. Good afternoon. Happy Sabbath, Jaquanda.
Oh, yes. And listen, all the way from Trinidad.
What?
We have Patrick, Sister Pat. Wait a minute. Isn't that?
That's his mom, yeah.
That's the way it's mom.
She is always faithful, always there, always good to see you. This is like our third mom. Glad to have you with us, Sister Patrick. I see Samantha P. Barkley. Samantha, always good to see Sam with us.
We got Hodges from St. Louis, Missouri. That's right.
Vetta, always good to see you, Vetta, here. Michael Haywood says a good Sabbath. Oh, I should be putting some of this up so we can see it. There we go. Michael Haywood. Yeah. There we go.
Praise God. That's right. And we got Scott's in the house. There you go.
Yeah.
Scott's in the house right down there. Yeah.
The preacher. Hey, listen, if you guys have not checked out WOW, W-O-W, WOW, I don't even know what it stands for anymore. I'm just drawing a blank. But no, it's not WOW. It's now. North Carolina Online Worship. Pastor Kagia Scott and Pastor Humphreys, Pastor Doggett, those guys get together. I don't know how Doggett got in a Carolina worship thing going on, but listen, every Wednesday night, every Sabbath, if you're just gonna go visit somewhere, check those guys out. They're doing some awesome work, awesome ministry, collaborative work together, and I'm just so excited to see what those young pastors are doing. I know they like it when I call them young pastors, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I got you. Listen, we got Samuel M. Williams in the house, all the way from Seattle.
West Coast. All right.
That's
good
right.
Stuff.
That's right. Well, listen, as we're talking about online ministry and the powerful job that our brothers are doing there, listen, the cases are rising, especially here in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
And I know that some churches are, going back online and doing that. So we just want to continue to pray for what's happening. The pandemic is real. It's still, I was saying at one time, it's coming to an end. And we believe it's coming to an end, but it's just rising up again.
Not yet.
So
not here.
That's right. So I just want to remind our viewing audience, our viewers, listen,
be safe.
Although we are still in the pandemic, God is still bigger than the pandemic. So continue to do ministry. Do it online. Do it any way the Lord gives you wisdom to do it, because the word is going out that Jesus is coming soon.
Yeah. And listen, I know this is not on our thing, but I just gotta throw this out there. This week I got a call on Wednesday night. I had one of my members, 30 something year old, said that she had taken ill. They rushed her to the hospital on Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, she was on life support. By Friday morning, yesterday morning, I got a call that she did not make it through the night. COVID. Stuff is real, y'all. I know people think it's fake and this government, this, that, and the other. People are literally dying. People that we know. I don't know. There's a whole lot of conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff out there. Come on, man. Yeah. I don't, that's not our show today, but yeah, it's heavy, man. It's heavy.
Let me add this into Pastor Paul. I was calling one of the individuals at the hospital. He works at the hospital, happens to be a chaplain in the hospital. And in our conversation, he said that the hospitals are filled with COVID patients. Then he said the great majority of those patients that are there are unvaccinated. Now, we know that people come in there while they're vaccinated and all that. We understand all that. But he just told me that the majority of the patients that are there are vaccinated. So this thing is real. We want to pray. And we know that nothing can really stop us from getting, this virus, really. But we just want to continue to pray, man, and just do the best that we can, so we can be safe.
Yeah. And I who knows if I don't want to show up at another member's house having to do what we do simply because our people didn't do stuff that was just smart to do. Stop. Just be smart. It's hard. It's hard on your family. It's hard on your family members, the people that love you. Just do the smart stuff out there, and I'm gonna let that alone. But yeah.
Again, we're praying. We're just praying. We see Roger coming in. Roger is
there. He is. He made it.
I made it.
Smoke still coming off the tires. Rolled in.
Literally. We were
glad you made it.
Duties.
Well, listen, you made it just in time, Roger, to ask our audience to do something for us that we ask them to do every week. We got to get this thing rolling. What do they need to do, Raj?
Yeah, they need to share, like, and subscribe.
All right.
If you're on Facebook, you need to like it. I think that's what it said on Facebook. I think liking is on Facebook. You definitely want to share it on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, you definitely want to subscribe, and you want to I think it's like there too. I can't remember right now. But we want to actually push up our YouTube subscriber list. So we're pushing for you to do that. And then today we tried it last week. We were hoping to get to 100 shares. We were not able to do that. But we're asking you this week to help us get to 100 shares. That's going to be our mark each week. We're going to try to get to 100 shares. So just share it. If you know someone who needs to hear this conversation, you want to share it with them. You want to get them involved. You want to do that today so we can get to 100 shares. Would you join me?
I hope it works, because they hurt my feelings last week, Elder. Last week, I made this appeal. I stopped mid-thing and made this big appeal about shares, that we wanted 100 shares. We've been getting somewhere between 60 and 80. And when I looked at the end of the show, we had like barely 30-something shares. Y'all hurt my feelings. I want y'all to know that. I was like, I didn't even want to give an appeal at church this week, man, because I was like, man, if I'm terrible at these appeals. But listen, we want you to share. So thank you so much for doing that, so that other folk will, because they want to be a part of this conversation. We've taken a long time. Let's get into this, gentlemen. What's on the table for today, fellas?
Yes, on the table. Listen, last week we dealt with our universities, Adventist universities. This week we're going to deal with Adventists on public campuses. So right. Adventists on public campuses. That's what we're going to be dealing with this week.
All right. Sounds good. Adventists on public campuses. And Pastor Wade, who is at the table today, sir?
Oh, today, I'm excited today because I have a good friend who's there here at the table. As you know, as Dr. Henry said, we're talking about Adventists on public campuses, but the very high percent of Adventists do go to public campus for schools, and we sometimes don't realize the major impact that Adventism have on these public campuses. But in reality, the public campuses have an impact on us because we don't recognize that. And so today we want to do that. And so at the table today, we have with us my good friend, who served as my first elder when I was at the Bethel Church there in Brooklyn, New York. We became the best of friends, and his family, sweet family, has been a good friend of ours, the Wade family. So I'm happy to have Elder Jeffrey Sigler, who is with us today, and he will share with you where he serves and what he does. And we have another mighty, valiant banner holder for Adventism on a public campus from California, Dr. Ty Douglas. He is with us here today, so we're excited to have them with us.
I see what we did. We did a West Coast, East Coast thing today. All right. I see what's going on. There we go. All right. Well, gentlemen, welcome. We are excited to have you today with us here at the round table. Excited that you were willing to accept the invitation to come and sit at the table to jump into this juicy meal that we're getting ready to get into this afternoon. We're going to ask Dr. Henry to have a word of prayer, and then we're going to give you gentlemen just a few seconds here to introduce yourselves a little further and to greet our audience. Dr. Henry.
All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this engagement. Thank you that we are able to talk about this topic of having Daniels and Esthers and these individuals in the universities that stand up for you. We ask God that as we talk about this issue, that we'll be inspired to know that we are making an impact wherever we go. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 All right, Dr. Douglas, Elder Sigler, we didn't really read your full bio and resume and all that stuff, and we are sure that it would have been very huge if we had done that. But we want to give you an opportunity just to say hello to our audience and to share anything that you'd like to share. When we have pastors on the round table, we give them about 30.7 seconds apiece. Since you guys are not, well, I don't know. I think both of y'all do some preaching, so we might have to keep that because we know what preachers do. No, but we're going to give you 48.9 seconds. We'll start with Dr. Douglas and then move to Elder Sigler. Just say hello, anything that you want to share in these next few moments to greet our audience this afternoon.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the Pastors Roundtable. Honored and privileged to be here. Thank you to the hosts for having me. Excited to be here all the way from the West Coast. My name is Dr. Ty Douglas. I serve as the inaugural Associate Athletic Director for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging at the University of California, Berkeley, aka Cal Athletics. I'm excited about this conversation. I can't wait to just lean in and learn and grow together. And just to also share some amazing things that God is doing. I also want to just give a shout out to Salt City Church. I've got the t-shirt on. Salt City Church is in Columbia, Missouri. So shout out to our lead pastor there, Pastor Braun Jacobs. Honored to be a part of that team and the work that God is doing on college campuses across the country. So I can't wait to get into the conversation. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doc. Elder Sigler, time is yours, sir.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much, Pastor, and to all the pastors on the round table. I, too, am thankful for your invitation, and it's good to be at the table. You know that when you're about to preach, the saints don't like it when the bio is read. They just want to hear you're a man of God and bring the word. So I'm glad you saved us from that today. Brooklyn, New York, Medgar Evers College. I've been there for quite some time. We'll get into that conversation. But since Ty was shouting out churches, I have to represent Brooklyn and Bethel Seventh-day Adventist Church in the building. We just want to, and Pastor Wade is not lying. Okay. He is not lying when he says, we were best of friends. We were so good together at the church that when he told the church he was leaving, somebody came up to me and asked, "Are you leaving too?" I said, "I am going nowhere. Pastor Wade is leaving. I'm sticking right here in my church." But it's a pleasure. I can't wait to have the conversation. I think it's a very important one, and it's one that sometimes gets overlooked.
All right, good stuff. Again, welcome, gentlemen. We are ready to dive in. Pastor Wade, we're going to kick it over to you, Doc.
Well, listen, we want to start off. First of all, I was just enamored with your title, Dr. Douglas. Share with us exactly a little bit of the title, what exactly it is you do, and share with us some of the factors that led you into serving in higher ed.
Sure. Yeah, it's a mouthful, right? Associate Athletic Director for Diversity. Come on, you gotta enunciate. I'm from Bermuda, right? So my nana's watching, she'll get all the syllables in. You know what I mean? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It sounds important. And I'll be honest with you, it is important, not necessarily because of the title, but frankly, it is ministry in the cloak of a higher ed title, right? The work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is the work of a Christian. It's the work of a pastor, right? And so I bring to that space, all of me. You asked me, how did I get into higher ed? Do you want the real deal, preacher? I don't know. I'm just wondering who you got on. I mean, my folks say pastor.
We say we're relevant. We say we're relevant and real. So come on.
All right. I'm just checking. I'm gonna give it to you. So I mean, the reality is that my journey started, if you will, on a college campus, but it wasn't a public one. It was Oakwood University. My mom was a 19-year-old college freshman at Oakwood that found herself pregnant, right? With me, and returned to Bermuda that summer. And I believe she had to try to figure out a couple of things. She was trying to decide, what was she going to do, in the 70s and even still today. Come on, we're talking pastors, right?
Yeah.
There's some realities that our young people face when they find themselves with child. She actually went back to Huntsville that fall and found herself at an abortion clinic. Listen to me. While she was at the abortion clinic, she felt me move for the very first time and knew she couldn't do it, right? So I just want to before you get into the, inaugural Associate Athletic Director for Diversity, all that stuff.
Right.
But when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about movements, my position actually happened in part because of the movements for social justice and the things that have happened recently. But movement for me has started in my mother's womb. That's not new for me, right? So when I think about my work, when I think about what I do, when I think about what I bring to this space, folks don't understand why I do it the way I do it. But if I have to go back to the beginning, right? And so it started in a mother's womb who felt me move and said, there's life here. And so for me, I get the opportunity at the #1 public university in the world to help to bring life to our administrators. I sit on our director's cabinet. I get to sit with our athletic director, with our senior staff. I get to work with our head coaches, our assistant coaches. I get to work with our student athletes. I get to work with our chancellor and our campus leaders. I get to work with the community. I'm a professor as well. So prior to coming to Cal, I was an associate professor of educational leadership and policy analysis at the University of Missouri. So we can get into all that. But if I was to sort of just piece it all together, preacher, like I said, it started in the room of a 19-year-old college freshman who felt life and knew that she had to keep it. And where you see me now really is a manifestation of that some 40 plus years later. And there's a whole lot in between. I can't wait to give it to you. But in short, I love to be able to love on people, right? When you engage in the work of diversity, you're really talking about connecting with people. You're talking about value. You're talking about ultimately, seeing the reality that Christ died for folks. But you also have to do it in a way that's respectful of the fact that not everybody believes the same way that we do. And I get the privilege of doing that and loving all people, not to make them Adventists, not necessarily even to try to make them a Christian, though that would be beautiful. But I think when you do the work in a public space, you have to be willing to meet people where they are and to love them irrespective of their beliefs. And so I'm humbled and honored to be able to do that. It has a chaplaincy component, and I'm happy to share more as I go forward. But this is just a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Excellent.
Elder Sigler. Rod, you can't hear what you just heard as a preacher, especially as an Adventist preacher, when you're talking about diversity and inclusion. And that brother said, this is the Advent message. This is, I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto everybody, every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. That's diversity and inclusion. That's awesome stuff. That's exciting, man. Excited already.
The problem is, I don't want
nailed
to walk
it.
down that road because that's a different show.
No. That's thing. That's what he does. That's that thing. So that's just
Right,
awesome.
right.
That's right. Excellent, Douglas. Thank you so much, Elder Sigler. Share with us what factors led you to serve at a high ed level, and what do you do similar to what Dr. Douglas kind of alluded us to. I know you have a similar story.
Sure. It's a powerful testimony that Dr. Douglas just gave us. And I would say ditto to everything else after that, right? I'm going to research, not steal what he said, loving on people, because that's what I feel like I've been doing in a public space at Medgar Evers College for over 25 years now. This is my 27th academic year at the college. But what brought me there was not my desire to work in higher ed, right? It was a story that, I played basketball and I just finished receiving my master's in guidance counseling from Brooklyn College, right? And this was in '95. And we were at a basketball, let's say camp or, workout. And I met a gentleman who lived in the neighborhood. And so, I'm not trying to take the train back home. He offered me a ride. I gladly accepted the ride. And he said I'd have to make one stop. And this brother made the stop in the Diamond District. And then it hit me for a second while I'm sitting in the car. I said, wait a minute. Am I an accomplice to something that's going down in the Diamond District? And I got blinked. But really, he was going to propose to his girlfriend at the time. And he had to pick up the ring. Long story short, after that, he gave me a call and told me about a position that was open. And hear how God works. And I didn't know his religion at that time, but here's how God works. He put me onto a position that was open at Medgar Evers College. The position required a master's. Because we were talking to each other that whole ride about what we were doing in our lives and what have you, he knew that I'd just received my master's. This brother could have just said, I don't have it. And then that was a done deal. He says, but I know someone who just got his master's that you might want to, look at for this position. Somebody I had never met before. We just met on that day. I did him a solid, sat in the car while he ran and got the ring. He returned that favor. And what happened was I went into the college to have a conversation with what I thought was working with Black and Latino males at the time. And I met with the president, Dr. Edison O. Jackson, summer of '95. And all we did was talk about community, talk about loving on people, talking about serving. I didn't even get to my resume. I was like the prodigal son coming home, rehearsing, I've sinned against you. I've sinned against God. Please forgive me. I didn't even get to my script. All he wanted to know. And then a couple of days later, the offer was on the table to work with their first year program. But that all started through a conversation. That all started through, doing someone a solid. It all started through somebody who barely knew me saying, hey, this brother just got his papers. He might be there. And it's, so it was only God. What I do at Medgar Evers College, currently, I'm the director of enrollment management at the college, which is really the gospel, right? You're trying to recruit people into Medgar Evers College. You're spreading the gospel at Medgar Evers College, right? As an elder in the church, we do enrollment, right? We do discipleship. So I see the synergy there. But I've been blessed over the 20 some odd years that I've been there to instruct in the classroom, first year program, to be the director of student life, and to also then come back and direct that first year program, and then finally to be in enrollment management. So across the span of working with students, you name it, I've pretty much done it or been close to it. It's been a great journey.
Well,
listen, these brothers here, I want to say this, Raj.
Y'all see
These
what I
brothers
had
here
when I
are
was at
preachers.
Bethel, right?
They're preachers. I love it, man.
You see what I had at Bethel. You see what I had at Bethel.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, excellent, great to hear the stories. Very inspirational in terms of each of y'all's journey to get to this point. And a lot of people tend to think that it's only when we are in the Adventist space that we have stories like that. But these are the stories that inspire our young people and help them to see that we each have a journey to go, and God is still in the midst of it. And it's not necessarily that we have to enter the buildings that have Adventists on it. And I'm going to say that and leave that right there.
Wow. Hey, this is great. So let's take it. Let's take a look at this. We talk about wanting to be real here at the Pastors Roundtable. And so this question that I want to posit to you. So we're for our audience, both of these gentlemen are Seventh-day Adventists. You can see they are very active in their local churches. Elders, preachers, both of them preach. I think Dr. Douglas told us last night he actually went to the seminary, spent some time there. Maybe he'll get a chance to share a little bit about that. So here's the question. As Adventists are known around the world generally for two things: healthcare and education. That we have great educational institutions, great healthcare institutions. And both of you, as good, solid Seventh-day Adventist Christian professional men, but neither of you are at an Adventist institution. And so here's the question. Do you ever get any pushback for, as much as we tout Christian education and Adventist education, do you ever get any pushback for teaching and working at a public campus as opposed to being at an Adventist institution? How do you respond to that? And what might be some of the challenges or the opportunities that you see being an Adventist on a public campus? Let's start with Dr. Douglas. We'll move to Elder Sigler.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so it's interesting. I love what you shared, right? That the Adventists are known for healthcare and for education. I think one of the challenges that we face as Adventists is that a lot of times our message is powerful and great, but the packaging isn't ideal, right? So, we've had a great health message for a very long time. But there's a whole world that sort of passes by in the whole, like, sort of vegan, sort of healthy eating. We're not really the leaders in that space, right? Similarly, even as it relates to education, we have, probably the next to the Catholic Church, probably the largest parochial educational system, right? And yet there are gaps. The packaging, So I think we need to broaden the lens of how we frame Adventist education. I no longer see Seventh-day Adventist education as just, as Pastor Wade said, the schools that have Seventh-day Adventists on them. I see Seventh-day Adventist education as any space where a Seventh-day Adventist is, an educator is. And now we're preparing our young people as an educator in those spaces. We have the opportunity to become all things to all people, that we may do what? That we may reach some, right? That we may love on people. So if I'm honest with you, I have not received a lot of pushback, in part because I have been intentional about, like, how I engage in the various spaces. I describe myself as a border crossing brother, right? I read a book about it, this capacity to transition between various spaces. And I believe I'm able to do that. There's a level of some dexterity that I have, if I'm honest with you, because I really wasn't educated in my formative years in the traditional Adventist system. So Mom was a 19-year-old college freshman. I'm gonna keep going back to my story, and I want to invite my pastors and listeners to do what I call me search. As a scholar, I do research, but I want you to do some me search. And I'm trying to model it for you as I share with you my own. That's where the breakthrough happened. So again, Mom was 19 years old. So she's pregnant. She keeps me. She goes back home to Bermuda, and of course, she's disfellowshipped, right? So she didn't send me to the Adventist school. She didn't want me to have to deal with the comparisons with my cousins who are of similar age, and deal with the politics of being her child in a school that she didn't feel accepted in as a dark-skinned young woman. I mean, you said this is real, right?
Yeah.
I just want to keep it 100. Right? So she was intentional about the school she sent me to. She sent me to a great public school across the street called Paget Primary. Then she sent me to this high school. So Bermuda was founded in 1609, right? She sent me to this school called Warwick Academy, founded in 1662. I'm talking about, like, the oldest, school, if you will, one of the oldest in the Western Hemisphere. I'm talking a bastion of, let's call it what it is, white supremacy, right? Like this is, but you had kids who looked like me there. She wanted me, I'm going to be careful how I say this. I'm going to love for all my folks, but she wanted me to understand how different worlds think. She wanted me to be in this space and to be able to have the support and the infrastructure of Sabbath school that my nana took me to, because she wasn't quite really ready to be back in the church space anymore just yet. But she sent me there. I had the support of the barbershop and the black church and these other spaces that helped to give me balance as I went into this historically white space and wrestled with and were around different folks. Again, after after Work Academy, I went to Bermuda College, a community college, right? In Bermuda, 2 years there, a vital time in my journey. Then I went to Oakwood for 2.5 years and got that enter to learn, depart to serve heart, that branding, that ethos, right? But if I'm honest with you, and listen, I had multiple scholarships when I was at Oakwood. I mean, from Bermuda and the like. I could have gone to any graduate school that I went to. And if I'm honest with you, like, I didn't really know when I left Oakwood the difference between the University of Alabama, Huntsville, and getting a master's from Northwestern. Can I just keep it 100? Like, when I looked at Obama's administration, I ain't gonna lie to you, I was actually frustrated that I didn't really see many of my contemporaries on his staff. And I'm looking at their resumes and their CVs, and I'm saying, what's going on? Like, they went to different schools from us for their masters. But again, when we talk about, healthcare education, there's some things that sometimes our young people aren't exposed to because we're so insular that they're not getting access to these higher echelons of spaces to have influence. So I share that with us because, again, I think it frames how I engage my work in higher ed. I'm not your traditional sort of Adventist. I'm Adventist, but I'm comfortable with ambiguity. I don't have to say in Christ for me to know that what I'm doing is in Christ. There are some people who they can't, if they can't pray in Jesus' name, then they feel like they're not praying in Jesus. So again, our journey set us up for how we can engage in different spaces. And I believe when I look at my journey, my academic journey, my spatial journey, it allows me to be a little bit more flexible and inclusive and less suspicious of those who may not use the same language as us at Adventist. So I haven't really gotten a lot of pushback. If anything, I think I've been able to inculcate my Adventist values in a way that's authentic, but in a way that also is relatable to people who want what we got, but they've never really be able to relate to our packaging.
Right. Wow.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Elder Sigler, how about you? Any pushback, and what do you see as some of the challenges and opportunities that you have on the public campus?
Sure. Just like, Dr. Ty, very, very little pushback. Part of my story is the fact that, I just took my stand for Christ in 2006, right? And baptized on the last Sabbath of that year. And so when you think about 2006 to 21, that's pretty much 15 years, right, in this. And then that's it. So just like what Dr. Ty said, I don't bring to my walk with Christ a T-shirt, a banner that says, I'm this, and that, no this, no that. I bring to it a person who from birth up until 2006 walked this earth in different spaces with a praying mom who made sure I was at Sabbath school, right? But I came home. My dad, who was not in the church, picked me up, but to me, he exhibited everything that a godly man should be. He was there for me as a dad. He took care of me. But my Sabbaths as a child ended when I left Bethel Sabbath school. And I really didn't return until my child was really born and we brought him to Sabbath school, right? You do what was done for you. And we would stay long enough. And I said, I don't know how y'all can stay in church all day. And I think about that somewhere, right? And the book that I haven't written, Dr. Ty, is Confessions of a Clock Watcher, because that's what I was. I used to look at that clock. They stay in church too long. The only time I used to come to church was when they did the Messiah at Christmas time and the 7 last words, during that Easter season. But I say all of that to say that we talked a little bit last night I don't get the pushback because I'm able to be me. And I don't always feel that with the Adventists that I've encountered, they're almost like in a trap, in a bond, they almost bounded by their Adventism and their Adventist roots. And what I mean by that is if they did slip up, where's the safe place in the church where they can say they really slipped up, right? Because their parents are still there, their grandparents are still there, the people that raised them are still there. I don't have those shackles on me. So if I say that I did a couple of things in my life, here's what I learned from it, I can be honest in my testimony, about that. So I think that allows me to be free. I don't get pushback because, once again, I don't judge. I'm not a hypocrite. And I think pushback comes when you preach something that you're not and people see you slip and then they give you rec about it, right? And so that's where it is. As far as challenges in the public space, you're always going to have challenges because there are things socially that you're just not going to do, right? There are things that you have opportunities. And it's interesting. I was the director of student life at the time that I took my stand, and I was about to go into a new position. But when I was director of student life, I wasn't in the church. So overseeing the parties that took place on Friday, Saturday, working events or whatever, I was there. Meg Evers College had graduations on the first Saturday of June, and that was habitual. But just to tell you once again why it's important for us as Adventists in public spaces to be authentically who we are, those first 2 years after my stand, guess what? I went to graduation on Sabbath. You feel me? I was at graduation. And there's this tussle about, is that work? Is that right? Should I be in the church? Should I not? And to me, I was an administrator. I got to sit under a tent. You hear me? So that wasn't work. You see where my mind was? That wasn't work. So I sat under the tent for the first 2 years. That third year, it just started to bother me that I should not be there, right? And when I told my president, who ironically it was his last year at the college after serving for 20 years, that I wasn't going to be there and why, he totally understood. You see what I'm saying? And so it's our responsibility in public spaces to tell people who we are. They can respect it, but not use it as a club or a hammer over their head. He totally understood. I called HR to make sure it was all right. Guess what they said to me? Said, Jeff, this is a Saturday. You're contracted for work Monday through Friday. You don't even have to put in paperwork to not show up on that Saturday. And it wasn't. And so you live in this cage unless you really allow yourself to speak your truth to power, let people know who you are and what have you. And so I think the opportunities is always to witness, but not in a sermon, but in your truth. And just saying, this is what I can do, this is what I will not do. And people actually respect it. So, I think there are opportunities to show Jesus without preaching the gospel, but it's just the way that you, once again, like my brother said, love on people and show them love.
Wow.
Pastor Paul, can I just piggyback off of Elder Sigler real quick? Is that okay?
Yes.
I love what he shared. As I've continued to think about your question, and I want to mine it a little bit more. There's some more meat on that bone. If I'm honest with you, some of the most pushback sometimes I've gotten, Pastor Wade, has actually been from Adventists who struggle to be able to sort of understand my dexterity, right?
Right.
I love the audience. I know you got pastors watching, and there are many pastors I know now who are leaving paid pastoral ministry in part because they feel confined, because the aperture for what it looks like to be a pastor has been too narrow for their gift set. And I've experienced that. In fact, I felt called to help to broaden that. I serve as a bivocational pastor. I've never been paid by the conference, a conference paid pastor. But the reality is that, frankly, we need more bivocational folks because the conferences can't even afford to pay everybody that needs to exert pastoral ministry, right? So, but what I've noticed is that there are many church folk who like they want somebody who looks like the traditional framework of what a pastor does, like and where he is and even his particular training, right? And so like again, I went to Andrews, I got my master's in pastoral ministry in part because this wasn't just like a just like I respect the vocation, right? I respect the train. I respect. This is not just you get up there and you just talk or you just lead. But I embraced the call of pastoral ministry in Missouri. Like I could no longer run from it. But the pushback sometimes came from folks who struggled to be able to understand that, yes, I was a professor at the university, but yes, I am a pastor. Like my pathway to pastoral ministry was different. I wasn't ready to be a theology major at Oakwood. Praise the Lord for my English major, sociology minor. That was my journey. But I want to say that out loud because there are many who are watching who are struggling because they feel like they don't fit because their journey wasn't, a theology undergrad, MDiv, and then you're sent to something, or you weren't picked up by a conference, and so you feel like you weren't called to pastoral ministry. I hope that a fruit of this conversation is that there's someone who's watching who also can embrace the call or be encouraged to know that your call has not been forsaken just because it may not fit within the traditional confines of the structure. And COVID has taught us at least one thing, that the structure, there's gaps, right? So I would say, yes, I've gotten pushback, right? And it's been from sometimes church folk, but I'm grateful that listen, man, our gifts make room for us. And so I want to just also celebrate, the administrators who also made room. I think about the Pastor Christian Josiahs, the Roger Bernards at Central States. I think my dear brother Dion Henry, who invited me here, like we met in the Central States Conference. And so I got to plant a church in a city that had no church that was really focused on the needs of people who look like us. And so I've always been able to be a bridge between two worlds and to be able to place that church in a context where it benefits from the university community, but it's also connected to the infrastructure of the denomination. So I would love to say, I've got two more things, but I'll defer to you all. But I have gotten some pushback, and I have two more that I want to share with you at some point when you're ready.
Yeah,
well, I would say
Douglas.
I would say go ahead and share that pushback now, because I think you made a point that kind of leads us into the next question, but share the pushback now. We don't want you to forget that. Go ahead.
Okay. So so the first pushback is like oppressed people struggle to embrace liberatory new things, right? So our people sometimes struggle to see. So it's going to so for those of you who may find yourself again struggling with what the framework looks like, it's okay to create. It's okay. You may need to start a nonprofit. That's what we did. I mean, we've received funding and donations from folks who probably don't even know what an Adventist is, but they saw what we were doing in the community and it created context for our ministry goals, right? So that's number one. You may get pushback internally from folks who claim to be Adventists. Number two, it's funny. I love what Elder Sigler said about how like when we engage in various communities, people can feel it. Like I can't tell you how many people have said to me, man, I feel something, or man, this felt like church, right? Or I mean, literally, people have given their hearts to the Lord in spaces that like other folks were looking with suspicion. I mean, I have some colleagues. I want to celebrate. I want to say it in a space like this. I'm talking about the ministries of folks like a Dr. Eric Thomas, E.T. You might have know his work. He was at Michigan State University. Now, he's doing amazing things in spaces where sometimes our Adventist pastors haven't been able to reach. I think about my friend Jeremy Anderson. I was just at his conference in Atlanta 2 weeks ago. It was straight up ministry. I mean, it was around the framework of like public speaking and whatever. But you better know on that Sabbath morning, folks came to the altar. On Saturday night, folks came to the But again, like people can feel it, but you may not always be able to lead with traditional Adventist framing, right? So they can feel it. I've had colleagues who have raised their sort of angst about some of the things that Adventists have done, but would say to me, but there's something different about you. Like the only way I can describe your influence is, this is the president said, the only way I can describe your influence is it feels spiritual. That's how they said it, right? And so again, sometimes you're going to have institutional pushback because of people's experiences with religion. So we have to lead with relationship without the strings attached that our interest in them is only based on whether they'll become like us. I read it, when I read my word, like Christ died for a lot of folks who will never accept him, they won't be in the kingdom, but he won't forget them. And I think sometimes we are so narrow-minded as it relates to our evangelism that we're really not committed to people unless they're willing to join our church. And I think people can feel and you love them to the extent that you say to them in how you treat them, that if you never choose to believe what I believe, I love you. I'm not really interested in necessarily making you like me. I just want to love you. I want to know you. And if you're interested in what makes me me, I'm happy to share. Final thing, the pushback that I got that helped me, if I'm honest with you, during my doctoral program as I emerged from teaching at an Adventist school for 5 years and started my PhD in North Carolina, was I actually had to unlearn some things. And it happened because of folks who probably didn't even believe in the same God as me, being farther along in this continuum of challenging white supremacy and challenging racism in ways that my colonial identity had prepared me to accept without consideration. Let me give you an example. I'm sitting in a class out of Sigler, right? And I'm feeling very scholarly, right? And I want to say this, like Adventist education has a space in higher ed. Like I said in that same, it was a philosophy of education class, right? And I'll never forget in that class, Pastor Paul, they asked me, what is education? They asked deep, the philosophical, right, Pastor Wade? And so I said, I waited for folks to answer, Pastor Henry. Then I said, well, true education, I believe, Professor, is the harmonious development of the physical, mental, and spiritual powers. And they're like, oh, that's so profound. Yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? They were, oh, that's so deep. You know what I'm saying? And we know that's our sister. That's EG, right? That's the auntie. Right?
Education 101.
Yeah. But in that same class, I had a colleague of mine, a sister. I don't know how she identified religiously at the time, but in my arrogance as an Adventist, I was reading Great Controversy at the same time because I was nervous about these teachings in the secular university. So I was reading the Great Controversy. And I brought it to class one day with the cover, and I rested it down strategically so that she could see the cover of the Great Controversy. I wanted her to inquire about what made me so deep. You know what I'm saying? So she didn't really ask any questions about it. So I got a little bit more forward. I said, hey, sis, you might be interested in this book. Take a look at it sometime. And she held the cover and nearly dropped the book out of her hand. Like what are you reading, right? And the cover, of course, Great Controversy, great book. But the cover had this European Jesus with European angels, all male, and everybody that was being saved was white. And she was just like, bro, what is this? How are you reading? Like, where did this come, right? And it was in that moment, I was just like, good question, right? And that led me down a season of reflection around how, again, packaging, right? There are some questions that we have to ask. And so sometimes in these higher ed spaces, they're further along than us as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And the pushback that they give us help us to refine how we present our Adventist message.
Wow. This brother said he needed to mine a little more. He did not come with a shovel. That brother drove a backhoe into this thing and dug that up. That was powerful.
It's spot on, though.
Stuff.
Yes, powerful stuff. Listen, this conversation is just, I think it's needed because we do have a lot of Adventists at public schools and public universities or universities that are not of the Adventist faith, and they're making a tremendous difference. And just hearing your story, both of you, on some of the pushback, some of the support. I was happy to hear that you didn't get all pushback, but there were some people who were really just supporting you. And I want to do a shout out to Central States Conference. Can I do a shout out to Ty Douglas? Central States Conference for supporting you. But here's the thing. So, your day-to-day activities, I think you explained it a little bit in your introduction on what both of you all do from a day-to-day standpoint. You gave a little summary. Are you able to represent your faith in your day-to-day duties? Now, whatever that means, I'm just want to hear from you. Are you able to represent your faith in day-to-day activities? And I think you all answered this a little bit, but do you feel that your Adventist faith or the faith that you grew up with, right? Or the faith that you have, connected with in this church, do you feel that connection with Adventism and the foundations, learning about,
the spiritual things that were taught by this church, do you think that those things prepared you for the public campus? So if I just summarize that whole thing, did the teachings in this church prepare you to serve where you are right now?
I'm going to defer to Elder Sigler on this one, and I'll go after him if that's okay.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, it's a great question, Pastor Henry. I feel, listen to this. I feel in my case, the world helped prepare me to be Adventist.
Well, you got me on that. Unpackage that thing, man. That's a good.
The world helped me to be Adventist in the sense that it's a very dangerous thing not to know anything but what you were told. Very dangerous thing, right? Because what made Christ so radical when he came on the scene, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, a panel full of pastors. He always referred to, when he was talking about the scribes and the Pharisees and the teachers of the day, when he talked to the people, he always said, "You have heard, you have heard, you have heard." Why? Because they were always spoken to about spiritual things. He came in the fullness of what those things were really supposed to be.
Wow.
So when you're in the world, right, there's a different perspective that, and I'm not saying good or better, it was good for me that when you're in the world, you could see a little bit clearly about what the gospel is really about because you've seen the other side. You've kind of experienced other things. And I think when I became an elder, people were, "Oh my goodness, you're going to see the board meetings, the people and that." The world prepared me for that. When you're on the president's cabinet, when you're on, I also did some work in my alma mater's alumni board, and I was on the board for 20 years. With diverse people, you're talking about Asian, Caucasian, different religions, Jewish, Catholic, or what have you. When you come into a board meeting and we're not acting right, even though we pray and let the Lord oversee, when we're not acting right, I say, "Oh, I've seen that in the world."
Wow. Ouch.
You understand what I'm saying? So the world almost helped me to be a better Adventist because when I took my stand, when I joined the denomination, I took my stand for Christ, but I joined the Adventist church, right? It helped me to kind of weigh and love on people a little bit more, right? Because I know that we're in a better place because we're in the church, because we're Adventists, but we have work to do. And so my church will tell you, I always say, we come in here to learn so we can go out and serve. And that's wherever you are. Because if you're sitting there keeping it to yourself, you're going to add on rules and things to satisfy your experience in the church, but not make you any good outside, right? And so, I think being in the world helped me to be a better Adventist Christian in that sense because of the interactions that I've had. And once again, I'll come back to it. I think too many folks are not feeling like they're in a safe place to be who they are in their walk. Not all of us are in the same path or in the same space. The testimony Pastor Ty just gave about his mother, it's inspirational because we see how the story ends, right? Mm-hmm. But if that was still today, that same mother would be catching wreck. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have church discipline, but the way I learned about church discipline was it was about also reconciliation. Yeah. At the end of it. You didn't just kick somebody out, but you moved them out of the fellowship of the church to reconcile them back to a set of core beliefs and things to make them better. It's always about reconciliation. And now we have hundreds of people, thousands, I bet, out of the church because they're angry at the way they were not reconciled back into the love of Jesus. So to me, when you come in and you talked about it, there are people in the world who sometimes demonstrate better Christian behavior, right,
You better
than we
stop.
do in the church. I think it's important for us to understand and learn that our experience in the world help inform our spiritual walk. They help us to grow and they give us an opportunity to challenge. And so I think to that question, it allowed me to be a better Adventist Christian by being in the world first, because it gave perspective, boundary, framing to what I was experiencing in my walk with Christ still today.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can relate to that as well. Like, I mean, for me, like I tell you, my mom was 19 years old. So, she was disfellowship, hurt. I want to give the end of the story a bit more context, the end of the story, because someone, they may log off. So I just need to say this out loud. My mom is no longer a 19-year-old college freshman. She is now a dissertation away from earning her doctorate, wait for it, at the University of Missouri, right?
Come on.
When you talk about reconciliation, you're talking about, she's now a licensed counselor who, she gets to do on a daily basis. And I believe I get to do this as well. I heard a presentation by Jason Wright of the Washington football team. He's actually, I believe, the first, he's the youngest black general manager, I believe, or president, I should say, I believe, of the Washington football team. He says that great leaders, and I believe pastors need to do this as well as leaders, he says that we have the capacity to absorb chaos and transmit peace. I want to say that again. He said, when he said that, he said, great leaders, right? We have the capacity to absorb chaos and transmit peace, right? I mean, when I think about that, I think about like the transition between like carbon dioxide and oxygen, right? I mean, I think about what Christ did when he took the craziness, the sin of this world, and he took on that chaos, but he absorbs peace. We have access to peace through him. And so again, when I think about reconciliation and I package it now, or I allow my story or my mother's story to become a prism through which reconciliation is not just heard, but experienced, I get to represent my Adventist faith in such an amazing way. It's a joy. It's a, what I mean? I get to live it in the marketplace of people who, I mean, they think I'm doing stuff, preacher. When we have gatherings, they don't know that it's just a repackaging of AYS. You know what I'm saying? It's something I learned in Pathfinders. I'm taking stuff from, they think I'm this great speaker, preacher, whatever. I mean, I'm combining leading the praise team and, preaching as a kid, or like they don't know. But again, for many of us, and this is why can I just share like just a vision that God has placed in my heart? Can I, is that okay? I know you got pastors and leaders watching. I believe, listen to me, there are so many young people and campuses across the country that really haven't gotten access to our message, particularly in the Midwest. Salt City Church is in Columbia, Missouri. Again, there was only one Adventist church in that city prior to us getting there. Now there's a second, right, in Columbia, Missouri. But I mean, imagine in other places across the Midwest where, you might have one little rural church, but you got black athletes to go to those campuses. We need bivocational pastors. We need folks who maybe help us to plant another Salt City church, in Iowa somewhere, or in the middle of these little towns, right? What you're working on your PhD, right? And you got an assistantship from the university, and you get a little stipend as well, where you're also pastoring and raising up a congregation. Like the capacity to represent our Adventist faith is most sweet in contexts that haven't experienced your Adventist faith. We're so insular at times. Can I just say it? Right. I believe that we got people living in Huntsville and in the DMV and in Southern Cal who are like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th string. They have to do nothing. They can come and enjoy the messages and the praise teams, but they will be starters all across the country if they realized and were positioned to use the gifts and things that we've been given through our Adventist connections in spaces that have never experienced what we take for granted. So I reconciliation, that has been not just my testimony, but I believe that's also the mission of the Christian as we absorb chaos and transmit peace. The other two that come to my mind when I think about the capacity to share my faith in and to represent my Adventist faith, listen, we got a world of folks who are busy and stressed. And so, the Sabbath message, not from a, it's Sabbath, not from a finger waving, but from a relational opportunity to reconnect vertically, to reconnect horizontally with our families, to reconnect and enjoy nature, to be refreshed. I tell people all the time, I was blessed to do in 6 days what many of my colleagues were not able to do in 7. And that's not to brag, but like I earned tenure a year early. I earned tenure a year early at a Research One university working 6 days. And people are like, yo, how do you do that? So I get to share my faith, and that beats coming in with the sledgehammer saying, it's an hour before sunset, you can't this. Like we've never made it, going back to the earlier conversation, we've never made our faith attractive because our results don't communicate that our practice and our theology is actually working. Right? So I believe that our Adventist faith, it will have greater resonance when it is grounded in real relationships and when it's grounded in results. Don't tell people that you're keeping the Sabbath when you look miserable. Don't tell people that you're keeping the Sabbath when you're not in good health. And they're saying, well, listen, I'm passing you the health message, and you say you're resting, but you get up on Monday and you look shabby. Like you know what I'm saying? You don't look like you have joy, right? So again, I believe that the marketplace of the world is a beautiful place for us to share or represent our Adventist faith. And I'll say this last thing. I've really, the joy of this current season of my life is that, growing up, I really wanted to be a sportsman. So I was an academic, but I was also, really good in sport. Pastor Henry, you know a little bit about this. I played cricket growing up. I also played soccer, but I played cricket. For those of you of West Indian background, you know what I'm talking about, right? And here's the interesting thing. As a young boy, born to a teenage mother, I went to church, but I didn't go to the Adventist school. But in my heart of hearts, listen to me, I wanted to be so good at cricket that they would choose me for the largest cricket match in Bermuda. It's called Cup Match. It happened last week or week before last, and it's a 2-day cricket match. But in order to make it into the match, you have to play the trial on Sabbath. Listen to me. This little Adventist boy who was really in the world, like I was raised in the world, but with Adventist connections. God placed in my heart at that age, I wanted to be so good that I would change systems. Come on. Yeah. I wanted to be so good. Yeah. I wanted my averages to be so good out of Jeffrey that they would say, yo, you don't have to play the trial. We just want you on the team. Yeah. And if I'm honest with you, there were moments where I wrestled with God because I was frustrated. I'm saying, God, why would you allow these noble dreams, Daddy, to not come to pass? I played soccer at a high level. My teammates played in the MLS and in the second division of the Premier Division. I went to church when we went on trial, and I get to the game, and I'm the one on Sunday morning after nut party the night before. I'm throwing up on the field like, God, why don't you let me score?
Mercy.
And then I look at my journey last fall, and I'm interviewing for this job, and God was revealing to me, son, I was stretching you because you just wanted to change systems in Bermuda to play cup match. I'm going to take it Adventist, and I'm going to do for you what I believe is almost akin to what God has done with Barry Black in the military and in the Senate. There aren't many other Adventists. I would be surprised if there's another Seventh-day Adventist who works at a Power 5 conference at senior administration, and I don't know if that's ever happened before. And I believe that happened because God was saying, son, that dream that I gave you as a little boy, you thought it was for Bermuda. You thought it was for Bermuda Institute. I want to give it to you to actually shift systems as relates to a world where now there's a movement for justice, and there's a denomination that also needs to consider, and I'm going to get out of the way with this, we need to consider as a denomination how we have failed to utilize and acknowledge the gifting of sport as a way to minister to the world. I've got something to say in a little bit on that. But I believe that the area, we know what to do for young preacher. We know what to do for young person that sings. But if God gave us a LeBron James who was Adventist, we would make him choose between his faith and his gift. And I believe there's room for both. But we don't think about changing systems because many of us have been grounded and raised in a system and never been able to envision what it looks like to live beyond it and to share our faith in relevant ways.
Right. Wow. Can I piggyback real quick on Pastor Ty?
Sure. Just before you do, I just want to say to our audience, we got about half an hour left, just under half an hour, 20 minutes left. Listen, if you have not taken the opportunity to share this stream, now is going to be about your last chance to get somebody in to get some good meat on this thing. So we want you to take an opportunity to do that today. We are blessed to have with us today Dr. Ty Douglas out of Berkeley, California, and Jeffrey Sigler. He is the man. I can't even give all that thing, Dr. Douglas, of Yeah,
The
y'all got to
accolades
go
and
back,
all.
scroll back to the beginning, catch the title. Jeffrey Sigler is the Enrollment Management Director for the CUNY Systems Medgar Evers College in New York. Make sure you take this opportunity, invite somebody to the rest of this stream, tag them, share the stream, do what you got to do, get somebody here for this last 20 minutes that we've got. Jeffrey.
Yeah, Pastor Paul, you're an excellent enrollment manager for this broadcast. When Pastor Ty, Dr. Ty talked about changing systems and you have to be courageous enough to do it, a few years ago when I was in student life, we had the opportunity to participate in what some people may already know is called the Honda Campus All-Star Challenge. And it's like a quiz show. It's like a Jeopardy. Competition of predominantly Black institutions like Medgar Evers College, but mostly HBCUs. So, of course, Oakwood participated in, the Honda Campus All-Star Challenge for a number of years. And let me show you where excellence and faith is. The tournament starts on like a Thursday, but it goes through Friday and Sabbath. Oakwood was so good in this competition, and they were faithful to the cause. They didn't hide the fact of who they were and what have you. And the championships were held in a beautiful resort in Florida on a Disney resort. Now they're back in California. But Oakwood was so good that on Sabbath, they observed the Sabbath as it came in on Friday. They went to church and worship on Sabbath. And the tournament, if you played Oakwood, if your competition was against Oakwood, you had to wait until the Sabbath was over to compete, right? They changed the system of this national HBCU competition because they were faithful first. We are not going to play on the Sabbath, but they were also excellent. See, I think without the excellence in what you do, it doesn't make room for the allowance.
That's it.
Right? And so too many people, when we're not excellent at what we do, we can't leverage that excellence for the faith. And so a lot of times it's very powerful. And that's what I just wanted to add, that real-time example of where excellence does actually change systems. And I believe that's transferable into all aspects of our life.
Powerful.
Absolutely.
Powerful.
Can I just piggyback off of the great elder there? So here's the thing. This is what God does. I want to show you the individual and what I love, because we're also talking about the institution, right? And how we can shift both and challenge both. There's a role for the individual and the institution. So individually, when I was offered the job, I'm sitting across the table from my athletic director, and I've got my youngest son with us, and he's literally like giving me the hat. Like I felt like a D1 athlete, Pastor, man. You know what I'm saying? They're recruiting me. You know what I'm saying? And I was
I'm gonna take my talents to UCLA.
Yeah, like listen, I'm taking my talents to Cali, right? But my son is there, and I'm able to say to my AD, I'm saying, listen, I would do in 6 days, but others will not be able to do in 7. But I want you to know also that there are some things I may not be able to do the same way, or may not be able to do during the Sabbath. And he said, listen, listen, we all need a bit more rest, right? And so he was actually very respectful of it. But here's the other part. I'm also, we're heading into football season now. Can I be honest with you?
Right.
And everybody's world is different, but I have different hats. So there are things that I'm going to need to do on a game day as a chaplain, as someone who, when I think about the athletic space, when I think about universities, like we have to think about these as not just mission fields, but I also see them as almost like biblical vows. Can I just say real quick, like when you look at the word, right, the vows do about 4 things. One is provision. I'm sure in the work of Julie Beadmead. But I was just doing some research, and one of these vows that do, there are places of provision where people hydrate, right? They get to provide for their families, right? There are also places of socialization. Right? There are places of betrothal, right? Places where you hook up and find somebody, a mate, right? There are also places of divine revelation, often like revelation happening in these spaces. I believe that university campuses are also these unique wows where young people come at critical times in their journeys and get access to a whole lot. Some of it is not necessarily always the best for them, but if we're not in those spaces, then we can provide the guidance. And so for me, on an individual level, I see the listen. When folks go to an athletic game, worship happens. Can we keep 100? Hands are lifted,
Yes.
songs are played, the pastoral staff does their thing. And for me, it's like if I'm gonna really tap into access and minister in that space, then I also need to be at those rows. I may not do things I'll do from Monday to Friday, but there are going to be some things
Right.
I may need to be just the ministry of presence to be able to love on
Right.
somebody whom I may never be able to access if I'm not there. So I think that I want to make sure that I can share that, because some of us, we don't envision what it looks like to really engage authentically and with intentionality, knowing why we're in a space on an individual level. On an institutional
Right.
level, I love what Elder Sigler said. I want to mention a name. My brother Ray Gray. His daughter's name is Raven Gray, I believe, an amazing volleyball player, high school senior, who basically they changed the tournament dates for her so that she could observe the Sabbath. I believe she was the best in North Carolina. Like, imagine. Let me just, I believe, I'm going to say this out there. Listen, it's not mine because I believe God gave it to me, but I'm going to say it out there. I hope it goes to wherever it needs to go for it to happen. But I believe part of our even enrollment, financial issues at some of our institutions of higher ed could be solved if we actually utilize sport as a platform for excellence and as a platform for recruitment. What if we went to some of those Adventist former NBA players who had to choose between Sabbath and sport, and we came to them and say, hey, listen, we've realized that we probably weren't as inclusive, DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, as we needed to have been previously. Would you help us to be able to fund a program whereby a young person who's the best in his sport, let's say in basketball, where you only need about 12 players, 5 starters, we can build a program where now we get to change a system and our team gets to play in the NCAA tournament. And now we're getting access to funding and right. But we don't even envision that because many of us have never been in those spaces. And that's why I believe I'm humbled and honored that God would allow me to be at an institution like a Cal, to be able to see how it happens, to be able to minister on an individual level, but to be able to envision and articulate what it can look like institutionally for us to really allow our young people to use all their gifts for the Lord.
I have to be honest with you. I experienced exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Douglas. I had the privilege of serving in the Mid-America Union. And one of the things as ACS director, the Adventist Community Service Director, and there was the tornado or the storm that happened in Jefferson City, Missouri. And the ACS department of the Iowa, Missouri Conference was called to help the city gather free gifts, free donations, things like that at a concert that happened on the Sabbath. I went down to support the team, and I was blown away to be in Jefferson City near Columbia. And I'm sitting there saying, where all these black people came from? And found out that Jamaica sends a lot of their students, athletes, to the University of Missouri on that campus. And then it was brought to my attention, the ministry you were doing there. And I was just pleased to know that we had some individuals who saw past the typical Adventist building and was willing to minister in places that we are not normally there. So I know it works. And obviously now with the Salt Church that's there, there are places around, even I would even believe there are some deserts. There's some faith deserts, even in Brooklyn, Elder Sigler. As you know, Brooklyn has 40 churches in one conference, but yet still there are still a lot of people who still have not heard the gospel, felt the gospel, lived the gospel. And I believe you are doing that there in Brooklyn. Dr. Douglas, you are doing that there out in Berkeley. And I just want to say thank you, because that's one of the things we wanted to do for this show, is to thank you for what you're doing in the public campus space. And we do appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dr. Henry had to step away because of, as you heard, he's there supporting his treasurer being commissioned today. But we thank him for representing PRT at the Florida Conference's commissioning of their treasurer. So we appreciate him being our missionary there. But we have just a few. we just we just have a few more minutes here, and I just wanted to ask the question. A lot of students are listening, or maybe we even have some parents who are listening. What advice would you give an Adventist student about their faith who finds themselves on a public campus or is considering to attend a public campus? What advice would you give? And I'm going to start with Elder Sigler on that.
Sure. Really quickly, I think it's about fit always. Make sure the institution is a place that really reflects culturally what you're about, academically what you're about. The size, don't buy more college than you can afford, but don't go to a place where you're going to get swallowed up. If you're better off where people know your name, then it's about the fit. I think also if you have the opportunity to get support from your home church, rally around that support. I think one of the things we didn't get really the opportunity to talk about, but it's the opportunity of what the local congregation can do for the students at these public institutions is to make sure that even if their tuition is covered because they can afford they can get financial aid. So many other things like the devices they need for class, the equipment they need, the other cost of education aren't covered. They should be able to get that support from their local church. And then finally, I say, be your authentic self. I had one student one time that stood for her observation of the Sabbath. They had commencement. We no longer do, praise God, but they had commencement on the Sabbath. She stood for it, but she didn't just not come to graduation. She wrote the president of the college and wrote to him and said, here's why I can't attend. I would like to robe. I would like to shake your hand, Mr. President, and take pictures with my family. Guess what this president did? He took one of the conference rooms and he set it up. She got her name called. She got her diploma handed to her. He robed up in his presidential gear with his presidential medal. The family was there. And only because she stayed her authentic self. Too many times we either compromise or we stay silent. And so I would just tell those students, if you're going to a public space, be supported by those who support you, but remain authentic because you are there to kind of reflect the light of Jesus Christ. There are too many examples where we are silent or we compromise and we don't get the chance to really do ministry. And a pastor that I knew that used to pastor at Bethel used to always say, you don't need to ask permission to do ministry.
I've heard that before.
Amen.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. That's great counsel. Yeah, that's great counsel. I want to just echo the sentiments of Elder Sigler, and also add to that. I want to start by saying to every young person who's watching or a parent who's watching that your journey is legitimate. I think sometimes when our paths are not the same as everyone else, we can question whether God is with us or wonder why is that happening, or maybe you didn't get to this particular school. I believe that you should know that God is guiding your steps if you're asking Him to, and sometimes even when you don't ask Him to, you realize He's been there guiding you all along, right? I mentioned the schools that I attended. I just want to say this real quick. I went to Oakwood. I graduated December 2000, I believe, and then I started at UAH, my master's, just because it was proximate. I had interest in the city. I was attending Madison Mission at the time, and that was helping me in my thinking around some like ministry frameworks. And I went back to Bermuda and taught for 5 years at an Adventist school. And it was interesting because many of my friends who grew up in the Adventist church and even went to the Adventist school were probably less inclined to want to work in the Adventist school. And I was probably more open to because I didn't go to the Adventist school. So again, your journey prepares you for things that may be different from somebody else. When I decided to go and do my PhD, I want to help somebody. And I want you, if you study the trajectory of my career, I can only say that it is God. But I applied to a number of schools. I got in to UNC Greensboro, and I accepted their offer And I graduated with a PhD with no debt. I have no student loan debt. So I want to put that out there too. In the name of Jesus, right? I want to encourage you to go where folks are going to help to pay for your schooling. Like, let's not, get these degrees, but then we can't start businesses. After I finished my master's, I went to Bermuda. I started a business, right? After my PhD, I was able to I've been able to do things, right? So I want to say that. But here's the interesting thing. My acceptance letter to UNC Chapel Hill got sent to Malaysia, Pastor Paul, and in the interim, I accepted UNCG's offer. Some 40 plus years later, earlier this spring, I had the opportunity to do a keynote address, and you'll be interested to know it was invited by the Chancellor's office at UNC Chapel Hill.
Wow.
And of course, my mother who joined me when that church that now had their 40th anniversary invites me back to be the speaker. And now my mom and the pastor who disfellowshipped her, they get a chance to reconnect. And he gets to say, I'm sorry for stopping by and delivering the message in the way that we did as a board. Because it's not just about pastors, but he was doing the work of the folks who voted to say you were no longer a part. He was able to stop and say, I'm sorry. That mother who's now about to finish her doctorate, she was able to be in that room with me to deliver a keynote to the school that I did not attend because I'm a loyal guy. I accepted UNCG's offer. But when I look at my journey of, Paget Primary, I'm talking about like a public school in Bermuda, to Work Academy, I told you about it, right? To Bermuda College, to Oakwood, HBCU, to the University of Alabama, Huntsville. That's a D2 athletics program. It's a research intensive school. But then, from there to UNCG, like typically, if you're going to get to D1, UNCG is a great school. They're D1 in athletics, the research intensive. But if I went to Chapel Hill, people would give the glory to Chapel Hill. Come on, somebody.
Right.
God says, son, I'm going to send you on a path the opposite way. I'm going to give you sort of like a Steph Curry experience. I'm going to send you to like a Davidson. But then I'll allow you to get to the league. You know what I'm saying? And so what he did was from UNCG to get dissertation awards and then to end up at a Mizzou, which is a D1 program, to be there, when Michael Brown is shot and killed. Like, he led me. Your journey, your steps are being ordered. And I asked him to guide my steps. And so it makes sense, though it didn't at the time, that he will lead me to where I was. And then to go from Mizzou to what folks would describe as the #1 public university in the world. Cal?
Mercy.
My Lord.
Like I say that, and I started intentionally from the womb of a teenager. I just want to encourage a mother, a parent, a young person who feels forsaken, who feels like you're on the outskirts, who feels like you were at the valedictorian. I want to encourage you to let you know that I serve a God who loves to work with folks who others look at and say you're illegitimate. Your journey is legitimate. #1. #2, there are campus groups that I believe could be a blessing to you when you're on a public campus, right? So you may want to check out an Adventist Christian Fellowship group, or you may need to start something. That's the beauty.
Right.
Can I get out of here if this passed away? The funny part is my athletic administration journey started at Oakwood, starting the Oakwood soccer team where we played against UAH and Alabama A&M and Calhoun, and working with Mr. Roddy, putting the jersey numbers on in the back room. I didn't know what I was preparing for when I was coaching the women's flag football team and I was writing for the Bermuda newspaper. I was just using what I had, whatever you have in your hand. You don't know what God's going to do with it, but I know that when you use your gifts and talents, God will prepare you for things that you may not be able to envision. And so don't be afraid to start something on a campus that doesn't have it. And then finally, wherever you go, know that God is with you. Christ is there.
That's right.
If I'm honest with you, my confirmation of taking the job at Cal, I was there for the interview. It was about 3:00 in the morning. I said, God, talk to me. I need to know if this is where you want me to be. And I studied space, and I went for an early morning walk. And the moon was in front of me. It was a beautiful night. It's a street where you have a lot of folks who are homeless, and it's just an interesting space. Our campus, it's really like it's a real just little just microcosm of a world that is complex, beautiful, brilliant people. But as I went for that walk, I looked to my right, and I saw for the first time this church with this cross with Jesus on it. And it was just like, God was like, look to your right. I want you to see that I'm here. All right, don't panic. And he said, keep walking, son. So I walked a little further, and he said, look down. I looked down, and there was an open condom wrapper on the ground. He said, son, this is here too. This is why I'm bringing you. He said, now keep walking. And he said, now look up. I looked up, and I saw some sneakers tied to the electrical pole, right? To the electrical lines, right? And for those of you know what you know, right? That's here too. And he said, keep walking. And then an alarm went off on somebody's car, and it was a young person that came running outside, frantic, trying to turn off their car alarm. And God said, listen, this is why you're here. Everything that you've experienced, the pain, the shame, the rejection, the exclusion, right, has prepared you to let people know that they are included. They are a part of my plan. I have a plan for their lives, and for every person that's watching, God has a plan for you. So I just want to encourage somebody, reach out to us. I know I said a lot, we said a lot. And so if you're interested in following up on your journey, we have a nonprofit called So Amazing Life Today, which is the organization that helps to undergird Salt City Church, SALT, So Amazing Life Today, right? So if you want to give to that, So Amazing Life Today, reach out to us. But also maybe you want to move to a new city and do something different. Maybe you want to come to Columbia, Missouri and help out Pastor Brian Jacobs. And maybe you want to come to Berkeley and help us to do something here. I don't know. But if you're tired of just doing the normal stuff and you're ready to allow God to show you what it looks like to be salt and light, come on, to the world.
Amen.
I invite you to join this journey.
Amen.
Wow.
Drop that mic. Drop that mic.
Dr. Paul, I know we got to end, but I think we got to get this last question in, because folks who are listening need to know how they can take the energy from what we have heard today and help. So the last question is simply this. What can local congregations near public campuses do to support Adventist students, or even students as a whole? What would you ask our local churches to do? Many of them are listening. Tell us what we need to do to be an impact on these public campuses.
Elder Sigler, you want to go, or you want me to take it first?
Yeah. No, you can take it first.
Sure. So I would say, one, I believe that we need to see our campuses as legitimate mission fields. These are legitimate mission fields that, there's, I know the students are transient, but, I think one of the things that allowed us to be successful in Columbia, Missouri is that we were there for 8.5 years, right? So as people come and go, you also need some pillars. You need some consistency. You need some healthy families. You need some healthy people, so that when the young people come, they can have some foundation, right? So I think that's one of the pieces, right? So seen as a legitimate mission field, make sure that you have your human infrastructure in place. I want to say something. I'm so glad you asked this question. I believe that the Lord would have me to say this. I want to encourage our churches to support our leaders, and even in particular our pastors who may need to go and get a master's or a doctorate, not in our institutions, but maybe they may need to go and get it in a different institution to be able to build those relationships. There are donors that you're going to meet when you work in those spaces. And I want to just challenge that, because with all due respect, I actually encourage my mentees to differentiate their organizational affiliation. So with all due respect to those who may, do the, undergrad in theology and the MD, you may not want to do your DMin in one of our schools. You may need to go and do a doctorate in social welfare, in sociology, in human development and family. You may need to get a different lens, because again, we try to reach a world, but all of our connections sometimes are within the confines of Adventism. And so I want to encourage those who are listening to support your pastor. If he, for example, I know Pastor Evan Willis in North Carolina is working on his PhD at UNC Charlotte. Praise the Lord, right? Folks are doing it, and be open to the reality that everything does not have to be within our structure for it to be supportive of, affirmative of, or even a part of our structure. I believe we need to reconsider what it looks like to mobilize our work for maximum kingdom impact.
Excellent. Wow. Thank you. Elder Sigler, what can congregations do?
Yeah, I'll be real quick, because I think I kind of tied that into a previous answer. I think it's important for the local congregations to understand who's in their church and where they're going to school, and to support those students, right? Support them financially, support them emotionally, support them. So many people in our congregations, they have degrees, they have specializations, they have gifts. So it's important to, one, know where your children are and to support them. But I think also from another discipleship evangelistic aspect, if churches are near colleges, they can support through their community service, right? Because there are so many students, especially now after COVID. We have our own food pantry at the college, but there's information that can be shared with the Office of Student Life or the president's office of a college and say, this is what we can offer any of your students who may be in need, be it from clothing, the soup kitchens that you have, the food pantries that you have on a weekly basis. There's never a wrong time to do a good thing for somebody. And as we were sitting here talking, I was just thinking, we don't advertise ourselves out in that way to our local institutions. Maybe we think because they don't need it, maybe they think, it's the camp of the Philistines. But I think we need to let go of some of that and offer what it is that we have to offer to so many students, not just Adventist students that are there, but to students in general who can benefit from it. Some plant, some water, but God will bring the increase. And I think too many times we're worried about the conversion instead of doing the work. God will do the work of converting souls, but there's no unemployment in God's kingdom. Once you say yes to Jesus, he just needs you to get into the field and do some work. So I think that's how we could be helpful to our local colleges.
Awesome.
That's great.
Good stuff. Elder Wade, if I could add just a little to that, I had the privilege of pastoring a campus church for 4 or 5 years. And one of the things that I think a lot of our members miss in this issue is that the majority of our young people in Adventism are on these campuses. They are not in our institutions. And so the things that you as a local church, as you as a local church pastor, as you as a parent feel that your children may be missing because they are not at an Adventist institution, provide it for them, be there for them, show up, have that ministry of presence when things are going on that campus. Support them financially for gatherings and groups. I had a church that I was pastoring in Tampa that the membership was about 97. I had 400 plus in church every week. Not every week, but we would have that kind of attendance there because the kids from the campus were going out and reaching and bringing people there. Other students and friends in the church grew in that context. So that's one of the not just the benefits, but it's the part of the rationale or the reason why it's necessary is that sometimes they will not get, they might not, every public campus may not have an Elder Jeffrey Sigler or a Dr. Ty Douglas, but that can be you. That can be you with your love and your outreach and being there for those young people. So thank you so much for that input, gentlemen.
Can I just say one last thing in 10 seconds?
Yeah. Absolutely.
One of the things that I think universities do not do very, very well, many universities do not do very well, is that there are a lot of young people that are 5 minutes away from these campuses, and especially young people that look like us. And yet those campuses could be 5,000, light years away because there's really no connection sometimes between the university and a lot of times the urban cores of our cities. And so for us, for those who are watching as well, I think it's important for you to know that like what your value add could also be to the university. Many of these universities, professors, some of my colleagues, they write about these communities, but they don't have authentic relationships with the people in the community. And so for us, our value add was we were reaching young people. I was, preaching on Sabbath morning, but driving the church bus on Friday night, picking up the kids. It wasn't always the sort of sexy, the worship service. I mean, it was relationships. It's relationships with mothers. It's relationships with parents. It's sending kids to Oakwood, right? So our institutions, as it relates to our Adventist higher institutions, also benefit when we get into this educational marketplace authentically. So I just want to just share that. Find the language that works for the young people. Find that common ground. Because I hope that folks don't take away from this conversation, all right, we need to just invite everybody to our church. No, you need to go to them. Salt City's home base is actually a park called Douglas Park, a basketball court, where we partnered with a local community. Go to their home court. Love on them there. And then bid them come, but they may not come to your building, but they will let you into their hearts first. And then you can build from there and build the connections across time and space that many of us have, but now we have the opportunity to connect people in meaningful ways.
Wow. Listen, one of the questions we did have, we're not asking this, was to what can we give to those who are in the same situation you are. But just listening to the conversation today builds on what I can do if I'm on a public campus. So thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for the excitement. It oozed out of both of you all today about how you minister on a public campus. And I just salute you and thank you for what you do for the young people, not just Adventist young people, but the young people in your sphere.
Absolutely.
Praise God. Thank you for the platform.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation, for what you all do as well. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Hey, well, we love to do it. Roger and I and Dr. Henry, we had the best seats in the house today, and this was a great place to be. I would not have wanted to be anywhere else during this conversation today. So, gentlemen, you can tell from the comments, our audience was blessed. This will replay. I guarantee you this will replay throughout the week, and people are going to continue to share this and just gain some valuable insight and inspiration and motivation based on this conversation and your contribution to it today. So again, thank you so very much, and we are just totally blown away and blessed by your presence today. Roger, I'm going to kick it to you. I don't know how we're going to do this with the two of us. But we'll make it happen.
We'll have to do it the volleyball way. So we'll make it happen. All right. Now, I just want to say to our viewers, we will put in our show notes contact information and references that were made by our guests. So you can come back to our show notes this week and you will have the resources to help you gain more input and insight into being an Adventist on a public campus, sharing it with your students, sharing it with your churches. We're just so excited. Dr. Douglas, Dr. Sigler, I'm gonna give you to Dr. Sigler. I want you to know that he is actually a PhD candidate, and we are looking forward to that day. I'll even make the trip, Elder, to see you walk across the stage and really support you there. I am just so tickled with excitement today because here at the Pastors Roundtable, we strive to make ministry relevant,
resourced,
and real.
All right. Take care.
Goodbye,
everybody.
everyone.